On this episode, we discuss Fantasy Island.
You best start believing in Fantasy Island, dear listeners, 'cause you're in one.
In an island? Hey everyone, and welcome to the Flophouse. I'm Dan McCoy.
I'm Stuart Wellington.
And this is Elliot Kalin. Big energy.
Yep.
Wow.
Hey.
What time of year is it, Dan?
It is... I was going to ask you. I looked at the calendar, and lo and behold, Shocktober is here. It feels like it's earlier every year. The time when we celebrate... scares and spooks and thrills and chills and kills.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll find out.
And sometimes the early Star Wars screenplay draft, Journal of the Wills.
Yeah, it's our horror movie themed month. Unlike the early years of the Flophouse, which was every other movie was a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, watch what you know. That's what they say, right?
Yeah,
Yep, that's exactly what they say.
Only partake in media that immediately fulfills your limited worldview, is what they say, right?
That's why the entirety of my entertainment is the CCTV feed inside my own house.
Wow.
Sounds
Would you file that if you were stocking that movie in a Blockbuster Video? Where would you put it, Elliot?
Yeah.
Sometimes in comedy, sometimes in adult.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess you can't be comedy all the time, you know?
So
Very rarely in documentary, which is ironic.
Are you watching?
That is weird.
Are you watching the feed while it's adult? Because I would argue you should probably be paying more attention to the matter at hand at that point.
Well, no, I'm a 21st
No.
century. I'm a 21st century millennial, so I live my life through screens. So I don't actually know if I'm being intimate with another human unless I'm seeing it happen through a screen at the same time.
That's fair enough. Okay,
A very Patrick Bateman way of approaching life.
Yeah, exactly. I saw American Psycho, and I was like, "Yes, this guy understands. It's not his body that's experiencing these things that matters. It's the reflection of himself that other people can see that matters."
Mm-hmm. And Huey Lewis and the news is great.
Fair enough.
Oh, this is where Patrick and I split ways.
Alexa, play Huey Lewis and the News Sports. That's for you, Jesse. Let's. I realize that I only explained one half, which is what we do this month, but not overall.
Okay.
Which is that we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it, or a presumed bad movie. We like to make up our own mind.
Yeah, we're not sheeple. And so Shocktober is horror movies, right?
And in this case, we watched a movie that was critically panned, but financially quite successful. It was a hit.
And I think we watched Fantasy Island, and I think it's a Blumhouse release, and I think it's instructive maybe to say a few words about Blumhouse off the top, because I feel like modern horror is kind of split into the Blumhouse thing or the A24 thing. And A24 is, mostly all prestige all the time, slow burn horror movies.
Yeah, imagine a trailer with stark imagery, dollhouses, winter, sparse strings accompany these images.
Heavy atmosphere. The A in A24 stands for atmosphere, and 24 is the amount of atmosphere, which is roughly equal to the surface of Venus.
Yeah.
Yes, and Blumhouse films, they've become very successful. They started out with a couple of franchises that were hugely successful, like Paranormal Activity and The Purge were big for them. And these are movies that are sort of like, a lot of their movies are based on a hook, and they've moved into more prestige horror.
No, but not the movie Hook.
No, not the movie Hook. Although that is a horror movie in many ways. What
about Candyman? Candyman has a hook.
Another hook-based horror movie.
Have a hook.
What about Dr. Hook?
Dr. Hook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
musician Dr. Hook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that. The Hook by Blues Traveler?
Yeah, it does bring you back. Anyway, continue. Blumhouse is more they're more the William Castle type. Hey, we're gonna have a crazy idea that gets you in the door.
Yeah, they're more the fun. I mean, like they've gotten into more prestige horror movies. Like they released Get Out, but that's also like a glossy horror movie that, even though it's taking on serious issues, is more of like you're still gonna have like a fun like ride watching it as well. And
Dan McCoy raves about Get Out, a fun ride.
Well, no, I don't want to. I don't want to.
I mean,
it
kind of is.
I don't want to be
doesn't hit all the horror and
but
comedy beats.
It is like, it is like
check
both,
your brain at the door, says Dan McCoy.
It is both, as I said, both dealing with serious issues and a fun, enjoyable movie to watch in the way. And but like they do a lot of silly stuff. They did Happy Death Day, which I enjoyed a lot. But they also do like. Dumb things that are based on a hook, like Truth or Dare, for instance, which we watched for Shocktober in the past, and now we're watching we watched Fantasy Island, which of course is
or Whiplash.
Yeah, Fantasy Island
is also a Blumhouse production.
I feel like Blumhouse also. I don't mean to. I haven't checked all the budgets, but I feel like they have a tendency to do pretty small budget movies with the hope of a big return. Like horror as a genre generally has been that in the past, right?
Yeah.
Where you can make a movie fairly cheaply, and if you get a hit, you make a ton of money back.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the Blumhouse model.
Horror has long been probably the second most profitable type of movie based on original investment. After pornography, which is, but like that, it's been that way for 70 years or so, and Blumhouse has been riding that wave.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job of it, and this is another high concept horror movie from them, wherein they take the 70s light fantasy television drama Fantasy Island, and they have turned it into a horror movie with a sinister twist.
Now, were you guys fans of the original television show this is based on?
I only know it culturally. Like, I know references to it.
Yeah.
I don't know that
Fantasy Island is a little before my time. I was a baby when it ended, or was 3 years old when it ended. I've only ever seen one episode of it, which I saw in syndication, which involved, the only fantasies I remember from it are Don Adams from Get Smart was one of the guest stars, and he had a fantasy of wanting
to... Not the cartoonist?
Not the cartoonist.
No, that's Don Martin. Jesus
that's
Christ.
not Don Martin. Not Mr.
I look like
Flown
such
Blum.
an asshole.
You should feel that way. You should feel that way, and I'm glad you feel that way right now.
Oh my God!
It was Don Adams.
Don't edit it out. Don't leave it in. I need.
No. Yeah, Stuart needs to take his lumps. If I've been saying it for a long time, Stuart's finally going to get his when he gets his Dons mixed up. But and it's not Don's the diner from my hometown that I used to go to as a kid and eventually closed down. So Don Adams, his fantasy was to be a World War I pilot. And he just walked through a door and was one. And it was kind of goofy. Like, that was supposed to be a goofy thing, because he's Don Adams. He's like, whoa, ah. It was like kind of a run-through for Inspector Gadget in some ways. The other fantasy was that an old woman, who was played by a young woman in makeup, and I don't remember this guest star, because the idea of Fantasy Island was that guest stars would show up as characters
like the Love Boat.
And magically live out their fantasies for a magic wishing well. Her fantasy was that she would be young again for a day so she could have sex again with a man. And that was...
Wow.
It was so, I think they couched it in terms of, like, love, but it was very clearly, like, she wants to be young again for a day so that she can be with men, for as many men as possible in this day. And she does. They give her some kind of potion, and the old age makeup comes off, and she's just romancing dudes. Now, the other thing I remember is Daffy Duck's Fantasy Island.
Yes, I remember that.
Looney
Much better.
Tunes repack movie.
Yeah.
And was that Daffy Duck's fantasy as well? To become young again and romance some dudes?
Yes, exactly. It was Daffy Duck's fantasy to be young, which is crazy because he's already a cartoon duck. He's eternally young. And to finally get with Bugs. And it was pretty tender. The scene is very tender.
Okay.
And the saddest part is when Bugs and Daffy they're lying with each other in the afterglow, and Daffy realizes that he finally achieved his fantasy, but that's all it's ever going to be. And Bugs Bunny kind of disappears in his arms, and Daffy runs into Bugs the next day at work, and Bugs is like, "What's wrong, Daffy?" And Daffy's like, "I got my dream come true." And it's just like a bittersweet moment. So that was actually a very beautiful
It's weird.
movie.
I never really got that vibe from those two guys, that they had feelings for each other, but I guess that's a subtext that I just didn't pick up on as a kid. I mean, that's kind of shows you that sometimes, depending on how old you are, your life experiences, you experience things differently.
Well,
so
it also
let's
depends
talk
on the
about
Looney
this
Tunes
movie.
director. In Frizz Freeling's cartoons, they were super straight. In Chuck Jones' cartoons, they were clearly into each other.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Blumhouse's Fantasy Island, Stu.
Okay, so I'm going to be driving this car, and in order to do that, I need to pull up my notes. Now, I do have to point out that when I pull up my notes, luckily it's going to hide the Skype screen, so I don't have to be constantly distracted that Dan and Elliot are wearing the exact same T-shirt.
They are very similar,
They're
but they're
similar.
not the exact same.
It's exactly the same size and everything.
No. I've got a
His is a
V-neck.
V-neck.
His is a crew neck. Elliot's stripes are fatter. I've got like thin white stripes.
Yep, that is the two types of podcaster.
Yeah, we could both have blue and white horizontal stripes on.
Yeah.
So we open on an island resort where a woman is running in terror. She runs into what seems to be like the office of this island resort. She is frightened, and she is worried that she has been abducted by some masked goons. And she picks up the phone, and the person on the other end tries to reassure her, but then knows her name. So that sticks the knife in a little bit. Not literally, figuratively. And the goons show up, drag her away, and we see on the desk a name placard, Mr. Rourke. Uh-oh, that's Mr. Rourke from the TV show of the same name, played famously by Ricardo Montalban. What?
The TV show Fantasy Island, you mean? The same name as the movie, not the TV show wasn't called Mr. Rourke.
It wasn't called Mr. Rourke?
No.
It could have been. So, and he was played by Ricardo Montalban in the TV show, as we'll see later, not the movie. So, later or earlier, we don't know.
I'm glad you pointed that out, that they didn't reanimate Ricardo Montalban for the film.
Yeah, so later, earlier, it's not super clear. We are at the same island. It is daytime. Uh-huh. A plane is arriving bearing, five attractive 30-somethings who have won a VIP contest to be guests at Fantasy Island, that's the official name, a mysterious island resort that is rumored about, talked about on the internet, where you can get your wildest dreams can come true.
Yeah.
The resort appears to be like a fairly normal upscale island resort. It's a little overstaffed. It's a little overdecorated.
Okay.
But it also feels oddly empty at times. It's that kind of, it's going for that perfect sweet spot.
Yeah.
I really keep reviewing it. Keep reviewing it, Stu. I want to know your full review of the resort.
How do the cocktails that they talk a lot about later look? What do you think about that?
They talk. I would say they look pretty delicious. I would imagine they're overpriced, but it could be all inclusive.
Yeah,
they don't really cover it since they've won a contest to be here. So I'm guessing everything.
Did they win a contest? Is that how it was explained? Because I missed that part, and then there's like later revelations where I'm like, well, how do these people know about Fantasy Island? But
yeah, they won a contest.
Okay.
I'm guessing they. I'm sure they mentioned it at the beginning where they hit like on an Instagram or something, and everybody, and then like a letter came in the mail or came in their inbox. I don't know.
It was the old Hit the Monkey pop-up ad.
So we are introduced to our cast of characters. We have a pair of brothers who are also kind of bros, played by Ryan Hansen and Jimmy O. Yang. They are JD and Brax.
Now, you might recognize, Ryan Hansen, of course, was Dick Casablancas on Veronica Mars. He was also in Party Down, playing kind of a similar doofus. And Jimmy Yang he's from Silicon Valley, is probably where most people might know him. I think he's a stand-up, and also the two of them played like business partners in another movie recently. So I guess they're just on a hot streak. Yeah, they were in Like a Boss, I think was the movie. Okay.
Now, what kind of name is Brax?
I don't know.
They keep calling him Brax, and I'm like, so is he a G.I. Joe bad guy? Like, what's going on? I don't understand. I've never heard the name Brax before.
Well, his brother keeps calling him T, which will turn out to be quite significant later on.
It's a real mystery.
Yeah. I think he calls him T. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I also don't remember the movie. I'm assuming he's calling him T because he got that liar disease where he can only tell the truth. We'll find out if I'm right later on. Okay, so
audience listeners, write down your guess. Why does he call him T in this Fantasy Island reboot? And you'll find out in the middle of the show whether you're right or not.
So we also have Melanie, played by resident pretty little liar, Lucy Hale. And she's kind of like a damaged, mysterious young woman. We have Gwen, played by Maggie Q, who is kind of regretful and skeptical. And then we have Patrick, who is a cop who wants to be a soldier, played by Austin Stowell.
This is, we have a couple of Flophouse doubles here. This is, because we did Live Free or Die Hard, right?
Did we do that? I don't.
No, you know what? No, we did A Good Day to Die Hard. Never mind. So she's not a Flophouse double, but the director of this movie did direct Truth or Dare.
Yeah, which I believe also had Lucy Hale in it. I'm not sure about that, but I think that she is in the Blumhouse
she was
stable.
In it.
Yeah.
So so Lucy Hale and the director Jeff Wadlow. I wonder if he's related to Robert Wadlow, the tallest man in recorded history, 8 foot 11 and a half inches tall. But But I don't
have it in my notes, so you could be right.
I'm going to do some research on that. But there's some Flophouse repeats.
Yeah.
So we get to introduce to our gang, and then hiding off in the bushes. That's right. There's an extra person on this island. That's Michael Rooker, and I was like, hell yeah, Michael Rooker's in this. He's not in it much though. So
no,
every
true.
scant Michael Rooker moment is a treat for you. Hold on to those. Clutch them close to your chest. Now,
everyone has a Michael Rooker moment.
Yeah, they talk a little bit about the island as they're being, ushered around by by the resort staff. That the island supposedly
hold on
promises...
a second. Sorry, I hate to say we have another double because I forgot that Ryan Hansen is also in the Friday the 13th remake, which we did on the Flophouse. So.
Okay, well, that was worth the interruption. So, the island promises a unique fantasy experience tailored to each guest. They are all immediately skeptical, particularly Gwen. And then she looks in a mirror and sees a ghost. So I guess that's what her fantasy is.
I mean, if Hallie was on Fantasy Island, then she would be like, I did it. I saw a ghost. Time to go home.
Time to take that plane with the little inflatable things on the feet back home.
I think it's just called a hydroplane.
They're not called planes with inflatable feet?
I don't think they're inflatable.
The plane with inflatable feet.
Then how does it float, Elliot?
They're just hollow.
What?
Like, not everything that floats is inflatable.
But is there air in there?
Is it like
Yes.
A pontoon? Is that what it is? A pontoon?
Let's call it a pontoon. Yeah.
So, I mean, we get all these characters kind of sketched out. They talk about, they're all like speculating as to how the island is going to achieve their fantasies. Somebody suggests LARPing, and you know what? LARPing's pretty cool, guys. I would have to say that in the last year or two, probably the two most rewarding gaming experiences I've personally had were involved in LARPs. I mean, this was obviously pre-COVID, but man, yeah, LARPing, all about it. Okay, so...
one other thing that we learn about this island, you don't tip the waitstaff.
Yeah, you don't tip the wait. I mean, that's not that big of a surprise for an all-inclusive place, Elliot. I mean, it certainly isn't worth mentioning in your review of Fantasy Island. Not the movie. I'm talking about the
No. When I write it up on Yelp, I'm going to mention that I was made to feel a little uncomfortable when my attendant at the hotel, when my what are they called? The guys who help you with your bag.
A bellhop?
Bags. Bellhop, thank you. They didn't really have a bell and they didn't hop, so it's not a great name. But when the bellhop said, "No, we don't accept tips," he said it with that kind of condescending, like, "Ugh, don't give me money."
Okay.
And I would have written up in a review. I was offended by that.
Okay, we just arrived on this island, guys. Let's let's keep moving.
Sure. Yep. So the host, the guy who runs this place, Mr. Rourke, shows up, and at this point, everybody is like, oh man, something bad happened in his office earlier. That's right. Now, Mr. Rourke is played by Michael Pena, a performer who normally has quite a bit of charisma. Here, he has decided to forget it.
Wow.
No, I mean, Michael Pena is a great actor, but I feel like they had him play it down, which seems strange because, I mean, you're inevitably going to compare him to a performer like Ricardo Montalban, who generally plays it fairly big.
Yeah. Well, they're telling him, I think, to play it mysterious.
Yeah.
And Ricardo Montalban was literally providing good fantasies to people, so he didn't have to pretend that he had secrets to hold on to.
That's true. I mean, but even those good fantasies, part of the whole idea of that show was that they would... introduce they would give you your fantasy, and then you'd realize, oh, maybe that wasn't what I wanted after all.
Yes.
So there was kind of a dark side. So it wasn't, whatever. So Mr. Rourke shows up, explains that they are going to experience their fantasy after a good night's rest, but not so fast. And he takes JD and Brax off right away and takes them to a crazy party at like a separate beach house that's kind of like the MTV Beach House. There's like jet ski stunts. And they kind of just enjoy this fantasy. Their fantasy seems to be about being like rich and famous. Yeah. And I don't know the specific. I can't remember the specific wording.
They said that their fantasy was to have it all. And so I guess to have it all means they just have like a mansion with a pool with a bunch of attractive people around, and they like smoke pot, and there's a DJ and stuff. And Drax, they make a point like
it's Brax.
Brax, sorry.
Yeah,
Drax the Destroyer
is from another planet. Yeah.
Brax. Brax is gay, which is reiterated several times. The main way that they like make this a thing is by just saying it a lot, which is fine. Like I don't need him to like.
It's never a punchline, which surprised me.
No. What I was gonna say is like other than like. Addressing it in like the most like straightforwardly obvious way, like I kind of like these two characters and their relationship. Like this very broy guy is like loves his brother so much, is like totally accepting of him. They're like best friends, and they're like like they carry good vibes around them. They're a little dumb. Their fantasy is a little basic, but they're good guys.
But we also, over time, we learn that they have a difficult family life, and that their parents have basically disowned Brax because of his sexuality.
Yeah.
And that deep down, there's a feeling of, I think there's a little bit of resentment that JD has that Brax is holding him back, or I could be mixing up who's being held back by whom. So there is a little bit of a dark side behind this glossy exterior.
Yeah.
It's also possible that they got the fantasy wrong, because if they said your fantasy is to have it all, maybe they just meant a satisfying career and a fulfilling family life.
Yeah.
What's that like, Elliot?
I'll tell you when I get it.
Oh, cool.
I think you need to watch a little movie called Baby Boom.
I don't want to watch a movie about exploding babies, Dan. That sounds terrifying.
I, however, would sit in a movie theater right now, COVID be damned, to watch babies explode.
Wow.
I would mask off and everything. I want to experience the whole exploding baby experience, because it's going to be 4D, right, Elliot?
I mean, and it's got to be 4D, because it has depth, width, and height, and time. So yeah, it's a 4D movie.
Perfect. So on to the next fantasy. Mr. Rourke interviews Gwen to get kind of a better understanding of her fantasy. She says she wants a do-over. She has regrets. She wishes she had a family. So what he offers her is he takes her back in time to a restaurant where she had been proposed to by her then-boyfriend, Alan. And at the time, she had turned him down. But this time, she can choose whether or not she wants a do-over.
Yeah.
And she's skeptical the whole time, and it is like, this is the first time where the island actually gets, like, magical, because they go through a doorway, and then they're immediately in what looks to be like a medium expensive restaurant.
Upper mid-range, yeah.
Upper mid-range, yeah. Not a greasy spoon. So she's going to have this fantasy. She talks to Alan. She realizes that she messed up, and that this time when he proposes to her, it takes her a little while to accept that she's like, this is actually happening, and he's not like an actor, and that he wasn't like tricked or whatever, and that he's the same age he was when he proposed to her years ago. I guess it was 5 years ago. And so she accepts his proposal. They're very happy. And when she wakes up in the morning, not only is it 5 years later, and Alan has aged exactly 5 years, but they also have a daughter. She has everything she wanted.
Now,
finally.
There are a couple things I want to say about these.
She has it all. Her fantasy to have it all came true.
Yep.
There are a couple things that I wanted to say about this. Number one, why? Number one, the thing is that this is one of those things in movies that happens a lot where everyone disbelieves.
Where a fantasy island makes someone's dream come true?
Yes. Where everyone disbelieves the magic for a long time. And the thing is, like, if you were in that situation, if you were in that situation, you certainly would. You would be like, okay, wait, there's no way I'm back in time. This must be Alan. They flew him out. Like, they go through that whole thing. So you have to be kind of patient with that. But you, as a moviegoer, is like, no, I'm coming to see fucking Fantasy Island. I know that this is a magic island. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
And also, like, when she wakes up at the second morning, I'm like, okay, well, this is great and all. I understand why I have to do this for plot reasons, but she had to skip both her wedding and the birth of her child in this leap forward in time.
When she sees her, I think at one point she looks at her phone and then she, like, experiences she looks at her phone and there's a whole bunch of pictures from all of those experiences on there. But the weird thing is, as soon as she looks at a picture, we then get, like, a video flashback. And I'm like, is that a video on her phone, or is that going on in her brain?
It must be a video on the phone because it has a filter on it that makes it look like it's from the 70s, and that's not when this is happening. So why would her memories look like that?
I think
it feels like it's the old story of the memories kind of flooding into her mind.
Yeah.
In that moment, all in one. In that moment, she has always lived that life, and so she's remembering all of it. The same way that someone would tell you that since dinosaurs are just a trick to try to get us to not believe in the existence of God, that when God created the Earth, he created a fake past for the Earth that had real fake dinosaurs in it, and so forth. It's kind of like that.
It's kind of like how when we used to record episodes, I would get so drunk that I would listen to the episode and then I would have the memories of recording it would flood back into my brain.
See, that happens to me now anyway. Like, without the booze, I'm like, what? We said that?
But this reminded me a lot of the end of Time Cop, where Time Cop comes home and has a wife and child, and he's like, I better learn this kid's name quick.
Yeah, I mean, I figured he'd just keep doing those jumping splits, and people wouldn't really worry about it.
It distracts them.
Man, those fucking splits, man.
Or he just calls his kid,
look at
like,
those cheeks and those little shorts he's wearing.
Yeah.
He just calls his kid Chief or Sport, and
big guy.
And it's like, do you know my name, Dad? Jump split. Look at this. Oh! And his wife is like, can you please keep your dirty feet off the kitchen counters? I know you can do those jump splits. And then finally, it's his son's wedding day, and he has to give the toast, and he's like, to my wonderful son. And he realizes at that moment he's never known his son's name, and his son realizes at that moment that his dad's never known his name, and there's only one thing he can do, is a jump split. Can he do it? It's 20 years later. His child's getting married. Can he pull it off? Let me tell you, he's JCVD, so of course he can.
Yeah.
And you see that full realization on his son's face. A son that is still, at this point in this bit, unnamed. A son who realizes his father doesn't know his name, and he goes through the full well of emotion until he realizes his father's just going to do jump splits now. And you know what? God damn it, he wants to see those jump splits. He still wants his dad to win.
Sometimes all you can get from your dad, it can't be love, it can't be acknowledgement, but you can get jump splits. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough. Hi, I'm Ellie Kalin for the Jump Split Council. You know, most Americans go through their lives never witnessing a jump split in person or experiencing a jump split. Maybe we can make a difference.
Now that we've talked about jump splits, although that has nothing to do with Gwen's fantasy, we're now on to Patrick's fantasy. Patrick is a police officer whose fantasy has always been to be a soldier. He wears...
Which seems like a not uncommon fantasy for police officers these days. A little on the nose, Fantasy Island.
So he even wears a pair of dog tags around his neck. And he is taken away. He's whisked away by Mr. Rourke and taken to the jungle, where he is given a pack of supplies, and he gets to live out his fantasy of being a soldier. He is immediately accosted by a wild-haired Michael Rooker, who spouts some gibberish and then runs off, and you're like, no, come back!
Yondu!
And then
Henry!
And then he's almost... Yeah, exactly.
Guy from Slither!
So he...
Grant, I think. Grant was his name in Slither. Anyway, let's go.
He then gets picked up by a squad of soldiers who don't seem to be playing around, and they I guess, kidnap him, capture him, and take him to another group of soldiers led by a lieutenant, and that lieutenant, we find out, is his father. A father that died when he was very young. And there's a lot of the two of them kind of... it takes ungodly long for the two of them to figure out this is what's going on. He's his son.
Yeah.
It's years later. His father died on this very specific mission in Venezuela. It took me a little while to figure out where they were going to be at. But, like, and still at this point, I don't really understand. Are these all actors? Are they made out of, like, mud and the black oil that I'm going to talk about later? Like, I don't know what's going on. So
it's a fantasy island, Stuart. It's an island with fantasies.
So, an island with fantasies is a different thing. That's like, it's like that Pixar short Lava or whatever, where the island is fantasizing about having, a romantic partner.
I guess you're right. That's the difference between a fantasy island and an island fantasy. Yeah.
So Patrick at this point is starting to realize there might be a dark side to being a soldier. So we're going to move on to...
He's like, I should have gone to Temptation Island.
Yeah, we're going to move on to the problem is his temptation is also to go be a soldier because he's a police officer. So
there are all these couples trying to hook up with each other on Temptation Island, and he's like putting them in headlocks and like interrogating them and stuff, and they're like, stop it, stop.
So we then move to our fourth fantasy, and that is Melanie, who goes down an elevator. Already you're like, what kind of fantasy is this? And she goes down and she's in like a control room, and there's she finds behind the control there's like mirrored glass, and the lights come on, and she sees her childhood tormentor, who we had learned in a previous bit of exposition, a childhood tormentor who had found her like letters she had written to her therapist, and then published those letters burn book style all over the school, thus ruining her life.
Well, close.
It was close?
No, this bully had tormented her in a number of ways, including dumping toilet water on her during the prom. Okay. I'm not really sure how that was done. It seems like collecting toilet water to dump on someone is his own punishment. But then...
you take a bucket, you take a ladle, you go from toilet to toilet. It's not that difficult.
I don't want to put that much effort into it.
I think you pay a plumber to redirect the waste pipes above a specific spot. You mark that spot with an X, or maybe like a picture of a toilet.
But then you got to make sure that he puts a valve in there too, so you can control the opening and closing of it, so it only goes on the person you want it to go on.
But
Step 2, rigging the prom queen election. Now this is more difficult, and the plumber is not going to help you that much.
You're going to need to get William Catt to help you do that. No, the other thing was though her therapist told her to write letters to her classmates telling them what she wanted to say to them because she felt so isolated, and then these were found and posted, and like she also hated her therapist because like he was I forget how he was bad, but he was also awful, and
she called him Dr. Torture for some reason.
So
unless that was just his name, like Victor Von Doom, maybe he was just Dr. Victor Torture.
So Melanie enters this control room. She, this is one of my favorite parts of the movie, is when she pulls out her phone. She's like, gonna record this. She starts talking to her phone, and in the middle of her narration, she then hits record on her phone. So was she recording before that, or did she just start her video late? Like, what the fuck are you doing?
That is listed on the goofs section of IMDb, I found.
I rushed over there first so I could be like, I must be the first person to have noticed this flub, and then I was disappointed to find out I was not. Late to the game. That's me.
Also, later on, like, as we will see in the synopsis, like, she will be like running around with this bully, and the big tension is whether the bully will find out that she was the tormentor. And I felt for sure like, oh, okay, she took that video. That has to be a plot point, right? Like the bully's going to see this video, and like the video does not figure into anything. So
no, it just shows it's a way for people to connect with Melanie, because they're like, I like making videos. I'm a tormentor. But not the song by Skinny Puppy, which rules. So she immediately assumes that that this woman that is tied up behind glass, played by Portia Doubleday, I don't remember her name, that she's a hologram. She keeps
Sloane,
talking about
I think is her name.
Yeah, she keeps talking about how she's a great hologram, which I guess that feels like a leap. I mean, I would just assume that the whole glass was a screen.
I mean, especially after she does the first thing, which is push a button and dump some toilet water on her, because the water would go right through a hologram. I don't know.
It
I
might
don't
be
know a lot
hologram
about
water,
science, but
hologram water.
I do
Dan,
know
it's
that-
hologram water.
Oh, it's
They can make
hologram?
hologram water now.
I see.
Because you remember
So
there was
she-
that they
yeah,
mentioned
so-
a couple times the hologram of Tupac that appeared at the Vatican at the College of Cardinals, and they poured hologram toilet water on that hologram also.
Yeah, seems
So
disrespectful.
she decides to torture this hologram. She uses like electricity. There's like shock things in the like little shockers in the armrests. There's she pours toilet water all over her.
As
and
mentioned.
Then she gets the opportunity to post a damning video on Sloane's Facebook. And then she gets to watch Sloane's husband watch this video of Sloane cheating. It's pretty wild. And that's when she realizes, you know what? Maybe getting revenge like this is not cool, and this isn't a hologram. Maybe my actions actually have consequences. So this is really leaning in. This almost immediately goes into this fantasy is actually bad. This fantasy is a nightmare. And around then is
The
when...
movie takes a pretty harsh fantasies of torturing people are bad
Yep.
perspective.
Stance, yeah.
So the door in Sloane's room bursts open, and we see a guy. We see Dr. Torture show up. He's like a doctor with his sleeves ripped off. He looks like the dude who runs around the stage at an Exhumed concert. And
To me, it was like an '80s WWF one-off character.
It is
But they're like,
100%.
Let's try this
80s
guy.
WWF
He's
character.
Dr. Torture, and he knows he's got an MD in pain, and then decided he doesn't work. Never mind, forget it.
Yeah. And it looks like he's going to torture Sloane, and then Melanie uses the previously established shocking thing and water to electrocute Dr. Torture and incapacitate him for the time being, and then she breaks Sloane free. She comes up with a ruse that she has been kidnapped as well. And just to remind everybody that Sloane was the woman who was running in terror at the very beginning of the movie. It took me a little while to figure that out. I'm not smart.
I immediately forget what happens in those like sort of prelude scenes in this sort of movie. I'm not like particularly interested in puzzling together the complex web of Fantasy Island. I'm just like, that's not important. Someone was running.
The two pieces of this puzzle. You were like,
It was like when we were watching Get Out together, Dan, and I leaned over and I'm like, that's the guy from the beginning. That's Lakeith Stanfield. He's very famous now.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's see. So at this point, all the fantasies start to take a dark turn. Brax and JD, they're hanging out at their beach house. Then all of a sudden, like a bunch of mercenaries show up wearing masks and guns, and they start just blasting everybody. Mercenaries are led by Kim Coates from Sons of Anarchy. It's nice to see him getting some work. And they get captured. They don't. They had previously found an escape. Not an escape room, although it kind of is an escape room. They find a panic room, and they find a room with hidden weapons in their amazing villa. All the models that they were partying with go hide in the panic room, but they get left outside, and they start to get interrogated by these mercenaries, and their friendship, I guess, is tested.
Well, these mercenaries think that they've hidden like money and drugs because they have it all because like this mansion is a drug mansion. At which point, Audrey, who has a inexplicable to me love of the Brendan Fraser version of Bedazzled, was like, they stole this from Bedazzled, where he like wishes to be rich, and it turns out he's rich because he's a drug lord. Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. It's the great cosmic scales, That's how everything balances. If you want something, you're taking something from someone else. It is a zero-sum game in this world, Dan.
That's capitalism. They're saying this mansion belongs to a big drug lord. You must have killed him and stolen it. And it just seems like a real loose reading of their fantasy to have it go that way. Much like the bedazzled wish.
Yeah.
It seems like Mr. O'Rourke or the island, whoever makes the decisions, is really taking the gray area of that fantasy and filling it in with things that he knows they are not going to be interested in.
Yeah.
So
I also had a question about Sons of Anarchy. I didn't see that show, but did it end with the main character having a baby and then being like, I guess I'm a dad of anarchy now, and putting his bike in the garage because he has responsibilities now?
Elliot, I mean, Wall Family plays an incredibly large part in the Sons of Anarchy universe. That show has one of the dumbest endings of all time. It does feature multiple, like, slow versions of classic rock songs, some of which are sung by Married with Children alum, what's her
Katie
name?
Sagal.
Katie Sagal.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Wife of the showrunner, Kurt Sutter. And it has... Oh, God.
So it's
I
like,
don't want to talk
and
about
they'll have fun, fun, fun till her daddy takes her T-bird.
Yes, exactly.
Fun,
and it
fun,
like the whole show is kind of like the loosest
Incense and
like
peppermints.
Hamlet.
Oh, it's like a Hamlet on bikes?
It's like a Hamlet on bikes,
Which
yeah.
I would see. They're going around the steel cage of death on their bikes, and they're doing Hamlet.
Well,
I'd
but
watch
that's
that.
the beauty of live theater, you know?
Isn't that? I guess that's Beyond the Pines. Now that I think about it.
Oh, kind of.
Place Beyond the Pines. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's the
before we
beauty
get
of
back
live
to
theater.
these-
you said, Dan.
before we get
At any
back,
moment, they can get on a bike and drive around, and only Rob Halford is really taking advantage of that aspect of live theater. To be honest.
I feel like Meatloaf at his show. I think Charlene went and saw Bat Out of Hell, the musical, and I feel like there's at least one motorcycle involved.
Okay,
in that.
okay, so they're taking advantage of it too. But Edward Albee and his work never took advantage of the fact that the actors at any point could get on a motorcycle and just get into a steel cage of death and drive around.
Yeah. That option's available to us all. So, I mean, when you get on the stage, you got the lights hitting you in the face, and you're like, you know what? Time to get in that steel cage of death. So, before we get back to the individual fantasies, there's a commonality between all of them that kind of signifies that there's something dark going on. There's like a constant sound of dripping, and like this like kind of black liquid. And we keep seeing this ghostly visitor that shows up that looks like a burned up like zombie dude. Now, and that's obviously those are things that you would assume not what somebody's looking for when they want it all.
And I want to just
Mr. Rourke is like, you said you want it all, and a burned up zombie dude technically is one of the things in all. I guess you're right. Okay, you have chicken pox now, technically part of the all.
Now,
all right, yeah, I have it all. And a club foot. Okay, yes, thank you all. But you have $100. That's it? Well, you have other dollars too, but you also have $100. Part of all. Okay, great. Termites. Did I mention your house has termites? It all fits under all.
So
like,
you're thinking, so all for this fantasy is sort of like Katamari Damacy sort of situation where everything in the universe has been rolled up and you...
Exactly, and handed to
you.
And
your dad's mean to you.
No, but I wanted to... I know, Stuart, that you are against jumping back, but I do want to highlight something that...
But pro kissing himself.
Okay.
Against jumping back, but pro kissing himself.
I wanted to highlight a thing that will become significant later. I don't want to spoil any turns of the plot ahead of time.
You can.
But Melanie, when she's setting up her room, has a framed photo of herself and a man that she has brought to the island. Even though this is a time in history where people have photos on their phones, don't need to pack an entire framed photo to take out and put in your hotel room as if to say to the audience, this is significant. But I just wanted to mention it.
You don't do that when you go on vacation?
Just
whenever I go on vacation, I always pull out my framed photo of me and you guys.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like having us there. Yeah.
I guess I pull out that framed photo of me and a guy in a Minions outfit, and I put it up on the...
I pull out a framed photo, but it's the photo that came with the frame, and I'm just like, who are these people? Time to find out.
What's
That's
their
my
story?
fantasy.
Yeah, so let's get back to these fantasies. So Melanie and Sloane are running away from this torture doctor. He keeps jumping out. No matter how many times they blast him, he just keeps coming back. Everyone's like, when they knock him down, like black oil squirts out of his eyeballs, and then he shows up later.
It's just like the Chumbawamba song. They knock him down, black oil squirts out of his eyeballs, he gets back up again.
Yeah.
They get rescued by Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker helps them beat up the doctor, and the doctor torture, and they keep running away. He tries to explain the rules. They end up he takes them to a cave, and he is kind of not giving me the vibes of a person I would follow into a cave, but whatever. So he takes him into a cave, and
so
it's
Stuart,
like
so I know, in case I ever want you to get in a cave, what vibes would allow you to follow someone into a cave?
I mean, first off, I guess I want somebody who's a good listener first, and not doesn't just kind of steamroll over me in conversation. Somebody who kind of wants to know what's going on with Stuart.
I see.
Other than that, obviously, I'd need to see his I'd need to see his hands, because fingernail care is a real good signifier of just general personal hygiene.
I feel like that was a real leap down from good listeners of fingernail care.
No, but that's the thing, Dan. It's a little thing, but it shows a lot about a person's just general hygiene and well-being.
So for you, it's sort of like the writer where no brown M&Ms, where if you see that wasn't done, you know that something else somewhere else has not been taken care of.
Yeah, that goes into the uh-oh column.
Yeah, all right.
And you get too many things in the uh-oh column, and it's I spin around on my heels and walk away from the cave.
And what's the other column called?
Yes, please.
Only two columns. You only need those two.
So they go down in this cave. He takes them under some, they have to go through some water. It's got all the stuff. They see zombies some more.
All the stuff.
It's what you'd imagine inside.
Yeah, there's a Quiznos, everything.
Yeah.
Again, Katamari.
Eventually, he takes them to what looks like a big room with a giant, crystal wrapped in tree roots, and it's squirting out that black oil stuff. It totally looks like something that you would have to attack in a video game to get to the next section of the thing. Something that I'm surprised it didn't have a health bar when they walked into the room.
It's a real Metroid boss. It's like what you fight in Metroid.
He explains that this stone or crystal or whatever is powering everybody's fantasies. There's magic. When he was a journalist or a private investigator who came to this island to try and investigate it, but he got his fantasy, but he realized it was bad, but he can't leave because Rourke knows what's going on, as in charge of the island, and they can't leave. So they come up with the plan that the only thing they can do is to take some of that oil, put it in a which has properties that once you drink it, your fantasies come true. I guess that's the magic. That's where the magic's coming from, and
that's where the magic happens you after you drink it.
So they luckily had a canteen. They fill that thing with that juice, and they're like, "We got to get this off the island." That's the plan, everybody. Meanwhile, did I miss anything, or did I get it 100% correct?
Yeah, that's it. For future developments, have we gotten to the point yet? Have we skimmed over the point where we learned that Mr. Rourke has a dead wife, and that's why he is on Fantasy Island, because he wanted his wife to come back, and we don't no one upon learning this asks to be oh, where is she? Because then that would ruin the surprise later on about what's going on. But he is tied to the island because it's one of those situations where if he leaves the island, his wife will be gone forever.
And so he's taken the job of
caretaker.
It seems like the island doesn't really need him to take care of the island. I assume he's just taking care of the island's buildings, because the island seems to do what it's doing without him.
I mean, the island can't get on the internet, Elliot, and advertise it to people out there.
That's a good point. So you're saying that he's a guy, he has social media marketing and web skills, and that's why.
Yep. He's like an ambassador.
But it's one of those mysteries where they're like, the fantasy. My fantasy was to have my wife back. I won't mention that there's only one woman on the island, and so if you're an audience member, you assume this is my wife. We'll just not mention that at all.
Yeah.
But Stuart, you got to. And so Stuart, the only thing I think
that came out when he had a heart-to-heart with Gwen, who is kind of I guess there's this moment of she's, even though she has it all, as we've already addressed, a husband, a child, she's
snails,
still
measles, Matchbox cars. It has it all.
Matchbox 20.
Matchbox 20, the whole band. I mean, UB40, 311, every band with a number in it, and also every band. The Beatles, the Ruddles, all of them. She's got everything. The turtles, the animals, the birds, the Bangles, the Go-Go's. Is there a band called the Spangles? If there is, she has it. The Misfits, all of them.
Yeah.
The Jacksons, all of it. Yeah.
The Cramps. No, sorry, go.
She has both the Lady A who was called
Rourke.
Lady A first and the Lady A that was called Lady Antebellum and then sued the person who was already called Lady A when they changed her name, which is crazy that you would do that.
All right.
She's got all of Kurt Vonnegut's novels, all of Joseph Heller's novels.
Okay.
She's got all of Thackeray's novels.
Stuart's moved past looking frustrated to looking at his phone, so we should probably keep going.
So, so she had Gwen. Gwen is skeptical, and she has a conversation with Rourke, and Rourke's basically explains, these fantasies are great, but you have to stay on the island to enjoy them.
Yeah.
And Gwen, for some reason, feels like she doesn't deserve this fantasy.
Yeah.
A reason that we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Patrick and his father have a long conversation. They come to grips with the time travel elements of what's going on. His father's like, well, if I'm going to die on this specific mission that we're on right now, fuck that. I'm going to go home. I have a son I got to take care of. And Patrick's like, no, dude, you die being a hero. It's very important to me that you die being a hero.
Yeah.
This was the craziest turn of character where it was like, you'd think his fantasy is to be with his dad and save his dad.
Yeah.
But his fantasy is to be there when his dad sacrifices his life so that he can keep being a hero for him, which is nuts.
Well,
there's a lot going on.
I mean, that was his initial fantasy, but he it's one of those things where he's like, oh, if you're not here, your whole unit's going to die. But there's a simple solution for that, which is everyone leave. Everyone get out of there.
It's true. Since it's not real, go ahead. I mean, and also, they're in some kind of secret mission in Venezuela are they explicitly saving hostages, or is it something else?
Something like that, yeah. And specifically, he knows his father dies jumping on a grenade, which would have wiped out his whole squad, but instead just wipes out his body.
But it is silly for him to... It's like if the Terminator went back in time just to make sure everything happened exactly the way that it Skynet's going to lose because of John Connor, but Skynet is very particular, so we need to so the Terminator's just making sure John Connor doesn't break his leg and keeping him from going out having fun with his friends on a trampoline and stuff like that. Terminator, can I go bungee jumping with my friends? No, Skynet needs you to stop it in the future. It's very weird to go back in time to make sure a thing happens.
I gotta say, at a certain point, I don't know why Skynet is so worried about John Connor, because they seem to rise every time, even no matter what John Connor does. So, I mean, they should stop pouring resources into their anti-John Connor program.
Yeah, it is a real boondoggle.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Skynet, like all things, is a democracy, and they have a big Terminator factory in Kentucky. So Skynet's senator from Kentucky is like, well, we got to keep sending Terminators after John Connor, of course, because we got to bring jobs to the robots here in the factory, here in my home state of Skytucky.
Now, is this a robot with an accent? That's what
very much so,
okay.
Yes. It is a robot with a southern accent.
Okay.
And he's like, well, us southern bots got a saying. You got to brings home the cotton if you want to be a robot. And Skynet is like, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Well, yeah, it's because you're a Yankee AI. All that stuff. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because we build these things in our own image.
Yeah.
Yeah, his torso is a giant pork barrel, like a metal pork barrel, right?
Exactly, because he's from a political cartoon, and he's always short-circuiting because he's just pouring grits into his grill. He doesn't have a mouth, really, so he's just pouring them into his speaking grill,
So they battle in the water, Patrick and his dad, until they realize, you know what? Why don't we just do the mission together, and we'll probably not get exploded by a grenade. And they're like, oh wow, maybe if we work together, we'll actually accomplish this. So that's cool.
I feel like that is kind of the ultimate dad fantasy, to be fighting a war with your son and then everything's okay at the end.
I also want to say, at this point in the movie, I assume that what the movie is doing is that this is going to be a horror movie in name and in some of the elements, but ultimately it is going to be a movie where all of these fantasies, as scary as they are sort of like radical therapy that will help all these people. And it's going to be like one of those rare, but they do exist, horror movies where the twist is actually at the end everything is okay.
Like The Game. kind of, which is not a horror movie, but you know what I mean.
So, now, Gwen, despite the rule being that you cannot have a second fantasy, manages to convince, I guess, a woman that we believe is Rourke's number 2 or number 1, but is actually his wife. It doesn't matter. That twist doesn't really matter, I don't think. Rourke's wife lets Gwen get a second fantasy, so she goes through the door she went through before. She goes back in time, we find out, and she's in an apartment building that's on fire. She bumps into all of our characters. JD and Brax are there. They're running out of this burning building. She runs up to a cop who is Patrick, and Patrick's like, we're going to wait for the fire department. We're not going to save the guy who's trapped in the room.
I mean, to be fair to Patrick, that probably is standard operating procedure, is for the one cop on the scene to not run into the burning building and not let the professional firefighters do it.
But this is, I mean, like, to be clear, this is like specifically why a couple of the characters are regretful. Maggie Q is regretful she wasn't able to save this guy, and because she started the fire on accident. And Patrick earlier was like, I had a chance. Hey, Patrick earlier had a chance to save.
Dan, I have a Billy Joel joke that I want to say.
Okay.
So when Billy Joel said that he and his band didn't start the fire, we now know that's true. Maggie Q did it.
Maggie Q did it.
Oh,
with
thank
her
God.
Tea kettle.
Oh, my God.
Dan, continue
that
with
joke
what you were
hadn't
saying.
been said.
If that joke hadn't been said, Skynet would be in control 100 years from now.
No, I
know that because there's a Terminator standing over me with a clipboard of jokes I have to say tonight to make sure Skynet gets to feed the future, and he was poking that one with a finger extra hard.
It's like how Robert Howard claimed Conan would hover over him and make him write Conan stories.
I wanted to make it clear that it wasn't just her regret. It's like she's the one who seems to feel it most keenly, but Patrick earlier was like, I had the chance to save someone, and I didn't. And that's also part of why, like, his father's heroism is so important to him, because he's like, well, I wasn't able to do it when it was my turn.
We find out that all of our characters are connected through this one fire and death. We'll later learn that Melanie was supposed to go out on a date with the guy who died, a guy named Nick, and that they all, not only were they all feel like they are responsible in some way. Even JD and Brax were, roommates with this guy?
They were roommates, and they thought he wasn't home, so they didn't go back to check on him.
So it's all, they're all connected.
Melanie's feels the most tenuous. I mean, there's a reason for that we'll get to, but, like, at first she's just like, I was supposed to go on a date with him and I chickened out or something like that, or like, and it's like, he was not supposed to be there that night. I'm like, I think you can let yourself off the hook for that one. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
Okay, so she tries to, but Gwen is back in time. She's trying to save Nick. She's trying to break down the door, but the smoke gets the best of her and she passes out. She's later saved by, is it Julia? What's her name?
I think so.
Wife. Yeah, okay. Julia.
Yeah. So all the fantasies start to intersect at this point. Somewhere in here, Michael Rooker tackles the torture doctor off the cliff, and we're like, see you later, sweet prince. That's the line, right? That's
that's what he says at the end of Hamlet. See you later, sweet prince.
He's a real Scatman Crothers character in this movie.
Yeah, so their fantasies all intersect. The Patrick and his father's team of soldiers show up at the villa where the mercenaries are. Brax manages to trick the mercenaries into letting him into the weapons room, where he starts getting weapons and blasting everybody, and he gets a grenade that he uses as like a thermal detonator type bargaining chip, and you see the grenade and you're like, but didn't Patrick's dad die from a grenade? Well, that, it doesn't actually happen. Ryan Hansen has an epiphany where he's like, you know what? Our relationship, you don't hold me back. I don't know why I would ever think that. And you're like, oh, great, that's really going to improve their relationship. He then gets shot. Mercenaries are all zombies. What's up?
I do want to, like this grenade. I do want to spend a little more time on it, because this grenade deserves like cast billing in this movie, because it gets taken around throughout the entire climax, and there's like a lot of scenes here where someone has their hand on the grenade. Like the first time it happens is right here, where someone has their hand on the grenade, and Brax.
His name's Brax. How are you? He is the only memorable name in the entire movie.
Brax, as the person is falling, like, catches the grenade from him, like, to keep the dead man's trigger or whatever from going off. And this grenade gets passed around like a real hot potato grenade. But it becomes...
I think you could have just said hot potato there.
Yeah.
But it's also a hot potato that is a grenade.
I wanted to specify.
It had to be really clear.
I didn't want the
listeners
to be like,
around.
oh, is there a really hot potato in this movie that like is going to burn people's hands?
Is this the beginning of the tin drum?
Yeah.
Whoa. Stuart, as always, laughing at his memories of the tin drum.
Okay, so all the mercenaries, they get smoked, and then they get back up as zombie dudes with black juice squirting out of their eyeballs. There's at least one kind of cool effect where the guy's lying on his back and his like eyes fill up with the black juice, and then they like break through the front of the eyes like the eyes are glass. That was kind of cool. I'll give it to you, movie. So Melanie and Sloane are like, hey, we know a way that we can get off the island. Even though our cell phones don't work, she was able to talk briefly with Sloane's husband after she posted that video. So they go back to the torture room and they call him and they're like, look, don't worry about all that stuff. We'll deal with it later, but I need you to call a guy with a plane. So
they got the number for the plane from Michael Rooker.
Yeah, they have a big reconciliation. Like, it's one of those scenes where she's talking to her husband, reconciling with him and apologizing, and it's really directed at Melanie in the room, being like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I bullied you."
And this is the strangest thing about this movie to me is that Sloane, who is not one of the original main cast characters, is the one who gets the cathartic, life-changing speech. And eventually, spoiler alert, like becomes the hero, and it's just a very strange choice to me to have it be this character who is set up as an accessory to one of the main characters. That she gets that emotional moment.
Yeah, and she, so at this point they start to float the idea that they realize that they're all connected through the death of this guy Nick, and they start to float the idea that maybe they're not living their fantasies after all, that maybe they're stuck in someone else's fantasies. And they start to assume that the woman that we later find out is Rourke's wife might be the mother of Nick, the guy who died, and that her fantasy is for them all to suffer and die.
Yeah, it's that moment in a movie where everyone suddenly makes giant logical leaps because the screenplay needs them to.
It is a very giant logical leap.
Yeah.
It's right up there with the scene in Batman 66 where they're figuring out that all the Batman villains are involved based on the phrases they have introduced to the conversation.
Is that the Vincent Gallo movie?
No, yeah. Batman 66 is the one where Batman gets out of jail and he kidnaps a woman and then takes her to his parents' house. And Ben Gazzara is his dad. But where Batman's like, there was a shark attached to my leg. It was pulling my leg like a joke. The Joker's involved. It's all some huge riddle. The Riddler. Where it's that kind of logic. Where they're like, here's an idea I'm introducing. Let's just treat it as fact now.
It's like he's Dirk Gently all of a sudden.
So they run to the beach hoping that their plane is going to arrive. The plane comes flying in and then totally gets blasted out of the sky by a missile. And you know what? That was pretty great. Then they run into the jungle, avoiding the mercenary zombies. They figure out that mystery that I just explained. They go back to the cave because they're like, let's fuck up this magic rock. Of course, they get to the cave. They all get separated. They're all haunted at this point by their demons, snakes, hands, double versions of themselves, those mercenary guys. Patrick's dad shows back up, and he has to battle him in the water again. It's like, is that in your contract? Multiple water battles? And then we find out then we get the big twist, guys. The big twist is that Melanie is actually the one whose fantasy was to kill them all. She was in love with Nick, and it was the worst moment in her life. And she also wanted to kill Sloane because Sloane made her feel bad. And so she wanted to kill them all. And she it really feels like Lucy Hale is wants to have her Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard end of Scream moment. but I don't know if she's got the chops. I mean, those two guys. Oh, what a performance.
Well, I don't think this is an acting issue. I think this is the fact that we saw her by herself panicking and trying to figure out what to do and being scared. So it feels more like Lucy Hale in the middle of the shot was like, this movie doesn't make sense. No. I have to explain it. I'm going to make up a reason why this is happening that's stronger than the one the movie is suggesting. Yeah. And I think she pulled that off, if that's the case.
If this is her fantasy, yes. We see her many times when she is alone, acting as if she is in danger. And also, like, it is an interesting turn because, like, okay, I mean, number one, she went on, like, one date with this guy before he died. So
they had a real connection, dude. Maybe he cleaned his fucking fingernails.
She's hanging on to a lot. She's hanging on to high school. She's hanging on to this
and
one
listened,
date.
And even more important, listen to him.
But also, the movie at this point has the weirdest message because, like, this woman bullied Lucy Hale, calling her, like, a psycho stalker, and then it's like, oh, actually, she is, like, evil and wants to murder people. Like, it's like this pro-bullying message. It's like, oh, I was right to bully you.
I don't know if it's so much a pro-bullying message as an anti-reaching out to people who are different than you message.
Yeah, it is. Whatever
it's not
it is.
saying you should bully them, but it is saying you should keep them at a distance.
Yeah.
Which is still not a great message.
No.
So we have a showdown in the chamber of the giant crystal. Melanie has her army of zombies.
Stuart, what a great chapter title for the serial that stars you as an adventurer. Showdown in the chamber of the giant crystal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would say... I mean, I usually don't refer to the different parts of my bowl of cereal as chapters, but I think that would make sense. Because the end feels like a real climax.
Each spoonful is a chapter, is the story of you.
Yeah. So, Rourke shows up too, and he basically is like, I can't help you guys. It's the rules of the island, dudes. And then he wanders off and he talks to his ghost wife. And then his wedding ring turns into smoke and floats away. And then he's like, I can help them. So he shows up. He reminds them that Sloane is the only person who hasn't drunk the black oil because she hasn't had a fantasy yet. So she drinks it, and then her fantasy, of course, is that Nick shows up out of the water. He does like a Jason Voorhees at the end of the first Friday the 13th, spoiler alert, and yanks Melanie down into the water, oil, and she drowns, and you're like, okay, the nightmare's over. Not so fast. She gets one final scare. She jumps out of the water with a grenade, throws a grenade at him, and you're like, always with the grenades. So Patrick then launches himself onto that grenade, and he gets smoked. The end.
Yeah, he gets his wish to be a hero, grenade. Just like his dad. Yeah, this grenade got thrown into the water earlier without the pin pulled, and like that's what I mean. This grenade just keeps getting passed around from person to person. Like they're like, we got to figure out a way to get this grenade to our climax so Patrick can jump on it.
Now here's the part that if it makes this a good link from Simon Conjurer. Our previous episode, which is they all wake up the next morning and the people who died are still dead.
Yes.
Yep.
It's like it was all a dream except for the deaths. Those happened.
And a link to Simon Conjurer because the magic has the people who are alive. The magic has fixed them to some degree. Like at least they can move on from a lot of what has been problems in their lives.
Yeah, now they have the new trauma of their experience on Fantasy Islands that has overwritten the old trauma that they needed to deal with.
True.
Yeah, so the at this point I guess the island is going to continue on. They didn't blow up the crystal, obviously. The surviving people all want to leave, and then we see a familiar face piloting that boat with inflatable feet, or the plane with inflatable feet. That's right. JD is alive, piloting the airplane.
I think he was
sitting up front, but I don't think he was the pilot.
Maybe we didn't see it, but I bet when that plane gets in the air, he's like, "Can I take the stick?" And the other guy's like. Other guy or girl? I don't remember.
Significantly,
was like,
though,
take it, dude.
Was like, hey, you do have it all.
This
counts as part of all.
He's there alive though because Brax is like, I will stay here on the island in return for him being alive again, much like Mr. Rourke had to stay on the island to keep his wife alive, and this is a sacrifice he's making, and it also like plays into the whole like, oh, these two brothers are too close, they need to separate, like this is a thing that's happening. I don't even know why Mr. Rourke is still the caretaker of this island though, because the only reason he was there was because of his wife keeping her alive. Like it seems like he's like, well, it should be like, see ya, I'm off this hell island now.
I mean, at a certain point, the wife fantasy just became an excuse for staying on the island, I think. It was really he wanted to be on the island. I think it's weird here that the rules suddenly seem to change because it's like, previously you come to Fantasy Island, you have a fantasy, and everyone turns into evil zombies and tries to kill you. And now his fantasy is for his brother to be alive and go back home. So is he sending an evil zombie of his brother out to kill their parents? Is that, like, how is his fantasy leaving the island? I don't understand.
I think his brother's going to be on the plane, and so that is going to play into a later thing where he is going to stay on the island and be excited every time the plane shows up. And his brother's going to be there every time he sees him, which is in a way kind of ties in my earlier thing where I was doing a reference to the Pirates of the Caribbean, since that series at the end of the third movie features a similar setup where somebody is cursed to stay on a boat all the time and occasionally visit Keira Knightley. So let's get to this final moment, okay, guys? We have a movie based on a popular TV show, and yet we are missing an integral character. The most popular character or one of the most memorable characters from the original show, that's right, is Tattoo. So, but Tattoo has not shown up in this whole movie. Now, Brax has decided he's going to stay on the island, and Mr. Rourke is like, well, you can't have a name like Brax, you got to take up a cool island resort name. Which just like when I go on vacation and I get my hair braided and I get a cool nickname for that whole time.
But also, if ever there was a cool island vacation nickname, it is Brax. So I don't know, it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
I feel like he's worried that Brax is too cool of a name. And
maybe
if a guest was showing up to the island and they were introduced to a person named Brax, they're like, is my fantasy to battle this guy?
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, we got to give you a new name. And he's like, well, I had this silly nickname back in college. And you're like, okay, this was mentioned earlier. Let's get this nickname. Why was he called T back in college? He pulls off his shirt and we see the word tattoo is tattooed on his chest. Tattoo.
Yeah, because he'd done it for like
the name of the popular character.
A dare to get the dumbest tattoo, and I guess the dumbest tattoo is just a tattoo of the word tattoo, and is. And
I'm going to tell you right now.
Not the
Head
dumbest.
over to the Instagram account snake__pit, and you're going to see much dumber tattoos on there.
I warn you. I warn you. Content alert.
Not safe for a
No, a lot of very sexually explicit tattoos. But yeah, this.
I'm not familiar with this feed, and I love that both of you guys are.
Well, Stuart recommended it to Audrey, and Audrey is shocked every time it comes up in her feed. I'm like, well, you can delete it. And she's like, well, no, it's interesting.
Well, you don't delete it. You
funny.
Don't want to mess up their follower count. Just mute it.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, no, he's Tattoo, which was foreshadowed earlier by him running across when the plane was coming, going, the plane! When they thought a plane was
foreshadowed also by this being a Fantasy Island remake.
Yeah, that as well.
So yeah, like it ends literally with the origin of the popular character Tattoo, which is what everybody was waiting for.
Yep.
So you walk out of that theater on a high note.
Yeah,
it's
you're like,
so
so that's how it happened.
Guys, I'm looking at these pictures now, and you're right. That is a good content warning to give to people.
Oh boy. So
it makes me question my imagination as a comedian that I'm like, well, I could never think up anything as crazy as these tattoos.
Yeah, the craziest ones are the ones that you see and you're like, wow, that's actually pretty great.
Great in the sense that the artwork is very accurate, I would say, not necessarily.
Oh yeah, some of those, yeah. Yeah. There's one that's like a drawing of Casper the Friendly Ghost, but with a giant boner, and then it's like followed by multiple reflections of the same image, and I'm like, oh, I'm haunted by the thought of this. It's like the end of that Alan Moore Providence comic.
Okay, sure. Well, this is the part where we give final judgments, and of course we have our special Shocktober categories that baffle.
I forgot about these.
Baffle my hosts every time. Was this movie totally scarifying? Was it totally snorifying? Or was it frightfully funny? Guys.
Now, is it frightfully funny or frighteningly funny?
I think it's frightfully. I prefer frightfully. Let's go with frightfully.
Yeah, let's do what Dan prefers.
Now. Look, it happens so infrequently.
I know. I'm just giving you the business.
Let's see. Well, here's where those categories fall apart completely, and I return to our normal categories. Guys, I got to admit,
I love, Dan, that you introduced those categories. No one was asking for them, just to immediately discard them.
I mean, people, I think, like
and then specify that he prefers one way, and then getting rid of it.
I like to do it because
it's like you ordered a price fix meal at a restaurant. You were very specific about how you wanted the sauce on the side, and then when it arrived, you threw it away and said, "Give me a hamburger."
I think people enjoy the confusion that they feel from you guys when I introduce it. But I gotta say, This movie is certainly not totally scarifying. Like, this movie is an utter failure as a horror movie. There's nothing frightening about anything that happens in this movie. But I have to admit, I sort of enjoyed it while I was watching it. Now, it totally falls apart if you give it any examination at all. Like, the plot makes no sense, but a lot of stuff is always happening. The basic premise is, pretty fun. Like, the movie certainly could lose at least 20 minutes. This movie is almost 2 hours. It should be a tight 90, if not like 82. But I don't know. When we were watching it, Audrey's like, I don't know, this is fine. Like, I'd give it 2.5 stars, and I grinned, and then I just handed her my phone where I had just put on Letterboxd. It's fine, and rated it 2.5 stars. So that's what I like. If you want something to fall asleep to, Fantasy Island.
Yeah, it's a movie that is relatively easy, goes down easy filler, and so I didn't. It's not my sort of thing really, but there were some jokes in the movie that I thought were funny. It's not like I was LOLing at them, but I certainly imagined myself LOLing at them. And so it is. I would say it is. Yeah, if we're going on the old scale, it is none of them for me. And if we're going on the new scale, it's somewhere between snorifying and funny, but it's neither of those.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is I reject both scales.
Yeah. I like that Elliot made a big deal about Dan changing it up and then threw Dan's ratings away.
This podcast is nothing if not like a slow lesson to all of us about how it's impossible to shove art to categories.
Yeah.
Well, especially these categories.
Yeah, like why try and ascribe like a numerical value on the quality of art? Just talk about it, man. It's meant to be experienced.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I would probably say it's in between snorifying and frighteningly funny. There's some really dumb moments, and just the whole structure of the third act just doesn't make any sense ever. And it feels like it's just thrown together by somebody who has a short attention span and is just trying to, I don't know, like surprise people, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, there are worse things that you could watch at a slumber party when you are 13 or 14.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You're at a slumber party. The best you can do is a PG-13 movie. I don't know, put this on unless you're going to watch Drag Me to Hell, which is the infinitely better option.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. Or like Alien. Like, you could watch that.
Is Alien PG-13?
It might as well be. It's pretty great.
What?
I give it 13 out of 10.
Is that your quantifying of PG-13 is pretty
great. 13 out of 10, yeah.
Okay.
And R stands for sometimes.
Oh, I thought it stood for radical.
It depends on what movie it is, really.
Yeah,
that's true.
Macho Man to the top rope. The flying elbow. The cover. We've got a new champion.
We're here with Macho Man Randy Savage after his big win to become the new world champion. What are you going to do now, Match?
I'm going to go listen to the newest episode of the Tights and Fights podcast. Oh, yeah.
Tell us more about this podcast.
It's the podcast of power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, woke discussions, man, and jokes about wrestlers' fashion choices, myself excluded. Yeah.
I can't wait to listen.
Neither can I. You can find it Saturdays on Maximum Fun. Oh, yeah. Dig it.
If you're looking for a new comedy podcast, why not try the Beef and Dairy Network? It won Best Comedy at the British Podcast Awards in 2017 and 2018. Also,
there were no horses in this country until the mid to late 60s.
Specialist bovine arse vet.
Both of his eyes are squid's eyes.
Yogurt buffet.
She was married to a bacon farmer who saved her life.
Farm-raised snow leopard.
Download it today. That's the Beef and Dairy Network podcast from MaximumFun.org. Also, maybe start at episode 1, or weirdly, episode 36, which for some reason requires no knowledge of the rest of the show.
Okay, guys. Well, it's time to move on to the next section of our show. We don't have any businesses sponsoring us today. Well, at least
wait, Dan, wait. Before we do, I apologize. One thing that says in the IMDb trivia that might have changed our mind. Apparently, Fantasy Island, they wanted Nicolas Cage to play Mr. Rourke,
yes.
It says here. But he turned down the role, so that might have changed things around in this movie.
I can't believe, number one, that we didn't mention that before, because I saw the same thing, and number two, that Nicolas Cage turned down a role. But let's move on. Like I was saying, no companies are sponsoring us. Well, that's not true. Jumbotron companies are companies in and of themselves, but we've only got Jumbotrons. So, Elliot, as you are the only one here currently, could you do the Jumbotron that I sent you?
Because when I said, oh wait, one more thing, that was Stuart's cue to leave. So I will now do my Jumbotron. For decades, Roger Ebert wrote a regular column to create his own definitive list of the great movies and foster a love of cinema from all over the world. Roger's List is the podcast where Steve Guntley and a rotating cast of co-hosts are setting out to watch each and every one of them, from The Godfather to Groundhog Day. It's just the G movies, I guess. That's just me interjecting. You kind of want to do an A movie and then a Z movie. From beloved staples to underground curios, Steve and his guests are watching them all. Check out the funny, insightful, and informative Roger's List podcast today. Subscribe to Roger's List on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That does sound like an interesting podcast, and I think I'm going to try it.
Stuart, and you also have a Jumbotron.
Okay, let me just pull it up. Mm-hmm. Let me read this one.
Yeah.
Okay. This message is for Elliot, Kalen, and Stuart Wellington. Okay. It's from Binge Listener. Okay, Binge Listener. Odd name, but that's fine. Dear Flopperinos, long time and Binge Listener, one thing I have noticed is that it seems like picking on Dan has reached a cruel phase as of late. I have spent money to ask that you stop bullying Dan so much on the podcast. It makes me sad, and I want to be happy listening to you. Well,
that's a real. There's a real loophole that has been opened up there, which means that you can bully me off the podcast. So, yeah.
Which, I guess that you do bring up a good point. This is clearly a critique of our performance on the podcast, because I think it. I like to think that we are separate people. We're performers, and we're also we have a private life where we're all very close friends.
Yeah,
and the show gives us kind of a safe space to try and make each other laugh and perform. And I feel like Dan, as a performer, is very good at being kind of the heel sometimes. So that that leads to...
Is heel accurate so much as... Maybe I'm more of a Bob Newhart sort of character where I get a lot of abuse. I
was going to say doofus. More like the doofus who kind of messes things up and then we make fun of him, which is not nice. Which is not nice on our part.
No. But I feel like, at least for me, part of the joke is that I'm a dumb asshole.
Yeah. Look, let's address this. Let's make it clear. These two are much, much, much... much nicer to me off air. They're both real sweethearts. Other than the times that we all get sort of irritated at one another.
In the listeners should know that you are much meaner off air.
That's true. That's true. I come across as a sort of an affable person, if quick to anger. But no. The thing is, the strife mostly only comes out off air in the sense that any three friends who now essentially run a business together might get annoyed at one another. But other than that, on a personal level, we're all very close. Just a reassurance.
I think I will. I'll say, listener, I hear your critique. I don't fully agree with it. It's a critique I've been hit with before, and I feel like the abuse we give to Dan sometimes goes too far, often not far enough. But I will quote to explain to my true feelings, which I hope come through more often, and which I'll try to have come more often. I'll quote something that my older son Sammy said to me today, where he said, "I love Dan." So there's a lot of love for Dan in my heart and in my house, and I know Stuart feels the same way. And so we will try to be more loving with him on the podcast.
No one wants to hear that. Oh, no one. But,
no, Dan, from now on, we're only going to tell you how great you are and how handsome you are.
I can't say that because my voice automatically always sounds sarcastic. So even if I'm speaking from my heart, people are like, oh, man, Stuart's winding everybody up again, which does not work well when I'm at the bar and I'm, like, trying to get a drunk guy to leave calmly. They're like, why is this tall, handsome guy being mean to me? I want to punch him. And I'm like, don't punch me. That's my moneymaker. I'm talking about the cash register I carry around with myself at all times.
That you hold in front of your face all the time.
Yeah.
I do like this new precedent that if anyone wants to criticize us, they have to pay us to do it.
Yeah.
So thank you, binge listener, for setting that up.
Let's keep that going. Do not tweet at any of us. Instead, pay a fee to have the critique happen on air.
At this point, I seem to use Twitter almost exclusively as a way to interact with my mom.
I did like when you and your mom were telling each other what was being cooked at your house.
Oh, yeah. Wellington updates, baby.
Oh, yeah. How did the chili turn out, Stuart? I felt bad that I couldn't have any.
Yeah, I mean, I went to all the effort to make a delicious chili, and I posted pictures on social media because I was hoping I would coax Dan out of his hole and come to my home. I had seen Dan posting pictures of his lovely walks around.
At Hinterlands. I'm not going to come to your home during the pandemic.
Just want to point out that I like that Dan took issue with the idea that Stuart was at home, but not with the idea that Dan lives in a hole. That was not what was taken issue with.
Yeah.
So I had seen Dan posting pictures from Prospect Park, so I knew he was out and about sometimes. And so I made chili at Hinterlands. It was a special. I put a lot of love and a little bit of heat into that chili, and it turned out really good. It was very spicy. I would say yesterday was close to like a 4 alarm, but today it's a little bit closer to like a 2 alarm.
Well, I will say, and look, as I've grown older, I'm not embarrassed to share these things with people. I was not out and about yesterday because I was at home pooping a lot, and so chili would not have been the thing for me at that point. So yeah, I apologize that my intestines prevented me from enjoying your cooking.
I'll save some for a day when you are not pooping a lot.
I would love that.
Just make sure to let me know. I mean, we probably can't schedule that in advance because you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, now the plaintiff and the defendant have stated their case. Now I, Judge Kalen on Chili Court, will go into my chambers and figure out who's going to win this case. My chambers, of course, being the bathroom. I'm out. Okay, that was fast. And guys, I've made my decision. I'm going to issue a writ of habeas pupus and declare in favor of Dan. So, Stuart, I'm sorry you lost this one on Chili Court, but feel free to bring any more of your chili arguments to Chili Court, the one televised court where we only deal with chili.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. Like, it's good enough that I get to play, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Elliot.
Always a pleasure.
I believe you had a piece of personal promotion and one for the show. You can feel free to do them in whatever order you feel most comfortable with.
Let's start with the one for the show. Hey, everybody, in case you weren't paying attention to previous episodes, we're going to be doing another live episode for charity. That's right, on the Flophouse YouTube page on October 24th, 1 week before Halloween at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, we'll be talking and maybe rocking about the movie Exorcist 2, The Heretic. A lot of people enjoyed our Howard the Duck show. This is going to be just like that. It's going to be the exact experience of a Flophouse live show in your living room or wherever your computer is. Take it into the bathroom with you. I don't care. It's on the YouTube page. We can't see you.
You can watch it on your phone, too.
Yeah, watch it on your phone in the bathroom. Or, bring the TV in. Maybe you have a tablet. Just take it on the toilet and enjoy the show. It's going to be at the Flophouse YouTube page.
You can watch on any sort of item, but you must be on the toilet.
That's the rule.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's not our rule. That's what the director John Borman stipulated about The Exorcist II, The Heretic.
Yep.
That it must be watched on the toilet. And so that's going to be October 24th, 1 week before Halloween. We're going to do presentations. We'll talk about the movie. We'll take some listener questions over Twitter. And we're going to be doing it again for charity, for a list of charities that will be up on the Flophouse website. So that's that on October 24th. Here's an announcement now that's not for charity, but very much for my own personal profit. I have a new book out. It's a children's book called Sharko and Hippo. It is a Marx Brothers-inspired children's book. It's not a children's book. That's not a thing that exists. It's a children's book. It's got pictures by the wonderful Andrea Tsurumi, and that is out in stores or for order online now. Please support your local bookstore and get a copy of Sharko and Hippo.
Elliot, I'm going, and I am ordering Sharko and Hippo as we speak.
Oh, cool. Walk us through that process.
Well, I mean, it's pretty much done by now. I did not.
Okay, so
I did not buy Horse Meets Dog, I have to admit, but the combination of you and a Marx Brothers themed or inspired children's book has inspired me to get not Horse Meets Dog. That's your old one. Get that one too. Sharko and Hippo.
Go buy Horse Meets Dog. If you haven't bought Horse Meets Dog, the one I did with Tim Miller, please buy that too. That one's also hilarious. But this one's hilarious too. It's kid tested, me approved. My kids love it, and I think yours will too. Maybe if you're an adult, you will too. It's called Sharko and Hippo.
I would like to correct myself. I have bought Horse Meets Dog for others. As a childless person myself, I did not buy it. But this one is for me. Sharko and Hippo.
But you've been looking for more bait for your windowless van, and you think Sharko and Hippo might be the book.
Please don't. Okay, so
Dan, what's the next segment of the show?
The next segment is letters from listeners like you, the listeners. It's a little redundant, but we can't change it now. Amos' last name withheld writes this.
Be nicer to Dan. Be nicer to Dan.
I make
Stuart,
it so hard.
Only the hard things are worth doing. We got to remember that.
I feel like he's leaning into it, Elliot.
Yeah. Okay. Amos' last name withheld writes, as a 90s kid, I grew up with some early 2000s films that I used to love, but in retrospect, were abysmal. For example, as a child, I laughed at every stupid joke in the Steve Martin Pink Panther reboot, the Leslie Nielsen Mr. Magoo movie, and most bewilderingly of all, even Old Dogs. I can only look back on my childhood in disbelief and wonder why I rewatched those terrible movies countless times. So, floppers, my question is, are there any bad movies that were staples of your childhood that you would now flop on the podcast? Keep on flopping in the free world. Amos, last name withheld. My brother, John, insists that I loved the Water Babies movie when I was a kid, the cartoon. I maintain...
Water babies, they make your dreams come true.
I maintain that...
Water babies, but not in a scary fantasy island way.
No.
If you want to have your dream, but you don't want it to turn into zombies, don't go to Fantasy Island. Instead, hang out with the water babies. Water, 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 babies, etc.
So, as I was saying, I maintain
Wait, Jordan, leave a pause there for the applause from the listeners at home.
Yeah.
Longer pause. Longer pause, more applause.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
I maintain that I was just a 5-year-old who would watch any cartoon in front of me. But later on, there are like in the dumb comedy realm of this, I remember watching like some John Candy things that John Candy, always charming, not often in the movies best served by the material given to him. So I would watch, like Who's Harry Crumb, which I'm sure would not like bring me much joy these days. I remember thinking that Delirious actually had some pretty funny stuff. I wonder if it would hold up, but that was another one I would see a lot. What do you guys have?
When I was a kid, I watched a lot of movies that I still love. Gremlins 2, the Star Warses, and stuff like that. But we also, in my house, we watched Teen Wolf a lot, and we've talked about Teen Wolf on the podcast. Yep. But that's one probably for us to keep in mind, actually, for a future special show. Because there's a lot to dig into about that dumb movie. And it is... It's so dumb. Like it's so, and I'm sure there's stuff I'm forgetting about it that's dumb. But we used to watch it constantly because it was my sister's favorite movie.
I mean, I don't know. I watched all your normal stuff. My wife and I have been not rewatching. We've been watching for the first time the television show Cobra Kai, so it made me think about how many times I watched the Karate Kid movies, and how I never really considered the trauma that would be inflicted in you, even if you win the karate tournament. The bullying, it stays with you, But I don't know, like you guys were saying, like for a while, like. The movie I was most excited about and couldn't stop thinking about was Second Sight with John Larroquette and Bronson Pinchot. Like I would just think of the movie poster and it'd sweep me away into a new world of imagination. And movies like that. I think my brother's favorite movie was Ski Patrol, so I watched Ski Patrol a lot. And by my brother's, it was my brother's favorite. It was like in my top 5 probably. And having rewatched that recently after our Howard the Duck live show, you know what? Still good.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that movie.
I think that there are a lot of movies probably of with big comedy stars of that era that I would give a shot, even though, and keep watching, even though they were not good, just because of who was in it. Like I remember watching Loose Cannons with Dan Aykroyd and Gene Hackman, and it's this is an awful movie. But
I feel like I saw Armed and Dangerous every other week when I was a kid somehow.
Oh,
or The Toy.
Brewster's Millions I saw over and over again because it was always on WGN, and I'm it was just good enough, but not any better.
Yeah, I watched that recently because I didn't remember it at all, and Charlene was like, "You don't remember Brewster's Millions?" So we watched Brewster's Millions. I feel like the thing is, and we've talked about this probably quite a bit, but a lot of the movies that I watched a lot that I consider to be kind of bad, part of the reason why I think they're kind of bad is because of things that I wouldn't really want to joke about on a podcast, I don't know, 16 Candles or Revenge of the Nerds or some shit.
Well, there's movies with problematic stuff too.
Yeah.
That, of course, when you're a kid in the 80s, you don't fully notice. But there are other movies where it's like Baby, Legend of the Lost Dinosaur or something, where I'm sure there's both problematic aspects, and if I watch it now, I'd be like, what is this? Taking
that VHS cassette home, I was so fucking excited that I was going to see a fucking dinosaur.
Yeah, yeah.
The VHS tape I rented from the grocery store, because that's where you got VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm. Along with Tammy the T-Rex and Theodore Rex. You're all three of them together.
Stack of tapes.
This triple feature.
This next one's from Connor, last name withheld, who writes...
John Connor in the future.
Oh, wow.
Dear Peaches, I was wondering if you guys had any favorite foreign rip-off cinema. For example, Turkish Star Wars, Indian Superman, etc. You might be able to pass along. Yours and flop, Connor, last name withheld. Just this last year, I watched Lady Terminator from Indonesia, which was a lot of fun. It's a movie that takes the basic outline of the Terminator for its maybe second and third acts, but the first act is all about the setup is different. There's this ancient sex goddess, snake goddess who gets a curse on her. It's a very different kind of feel. It's a lot more mystical, but it's a very
that wasn't in
movie.
The original Terminator.
No, it's extremely entertaining. It's a fun one. Anyone else have anything or not?
I don't know. I mean, I am a fan of Turkish Star Wars. I think it gets kind of dull after a while, but the first 10 minutes or so of that is pretty fun, nonsense. And I love the fact that the backgrounds they're using for the space fight scenes is just footage from Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So you'll see battle footage from Star Wars in the background, and the character spaceships flying through spaceships and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if there's any.
I actually don't have a lot of experience with this sort of stuff. That's I feel like it's a pretty big staple of bad movie culture.
Yeah.
That was never really part of my schooling.
I mean, I will acknowledge that there is perhaps an icky side to the idea of okay, well, these other cultures have done this bad version of a Hollywood blockbuster and laughing at that. But I also, and I understand that part of it I don't care for. But sometimes you watch these movies and it's like, Be Kind, Rewind, where you're watching these Hollywood-style movies like done in this handmade way that makes them a lot more charming, and then like people throwing in elements from local culture to like, make it their own. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's some joy of cinema.
Yeah. So those are the letters for this episode. And there's one last thing we need to do before signing off for this Flophouse, and that is make recommendations of movies that you may want to watch instead of Fantasyland. Let's just say that. It's Shocktober, so I'm going to recommend a movie that it was recommended previously, but way back by Paul Saborin as a guest. None of us said anything about it in particular, and that is Train to Busan, which I finally got around to watching. I sort of put it off because I will be honest with you guys, I'm kind of zombied out. Used to be my favorite of the major horror monsters. Now I'm like, can we just stop with the zombies? But it is a very kinetic...
That is a great title for a zombie movie, though. Can we just stop with the zombies?
That is like the attitude of the like nerdy brother from the Mummy franchise by the time they get to the third Mummy movie. He's like, stop with the mummies.
You've talked about his character arc, right? From, I don't believe in mummies, I'm scared of mummies, I'm tired of mummies.
Well, Train to Busan is a Korean horror movie, and it shares with, oddly enough, Snowpiercer, the being trapped on a train element, and the sort of class undercurrent, the metaphor of the movie, but very different. It's very much an action horror movie with like just wanting to supply you with thrills, and it won me over. Like I said, too many zombies in my life before this movie. Not sure I need to see a lot more zombie movies unless they bring something new to the table. But this one, Audrey told me I had to recommend it because she could hear me from the other room yelling at the screen at different points, like, "No, why? Don't stop! No!"
Oh yeah, it's like a really well made movie, and there are a bunch of great sequences where you're like, "No, don't do that!"
Yeah,
and the production values are astonishing.
Yes, it
looks amazing.
Yeah, So if you're looking for like a fun horror movie this season, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's